Hi, I'm Shane Sandham and welcome to the Boxing Coach. In this video, I'm going to show you some of the more common mistakes the boxers make with their footwork. If you haven't already watched my video on the boxing footwork basics, please watch that first so that you have a good grounding on the art of footwork. Remember, good footwork leaves you in the right position at the right time, allowing you to attack and defend exactly when you need to. Bad footwork puts you in the wrong position, catches you off guard, off balance, and completely vulnerable and exposed to any attack your opponent wants to put on you. Whenever you move in boxing, you always want to revert back to your original good stance. If you take a step forward, you want to be back in your stance. Backwards, left, right. First mistake I want to talk about is your feet. If boxers don't engage the muscles in their lower legs and their ankles, when they move, their feet start to flare outwards. If your feet are flared out, it creates a number of problems. We'll start by looking at the back foot. If your back foot is pointing towards 3 o'clock, what happens here is you limit your range and mobility in your hip. If you take a look at this shot here, this is my full extension and full rotation. If I just twist my back foot from 3 to 2, you can see how much more range you can get within your shots. It might look like such a small thing, but that small difference is going to equate to more power and also make it harder for your opponent to get into you, as they're going to have to work through a longer range. If you're stood in a southpaw position, it's the exact same. Your back foot should not be pointing towards 9 o'clock. If you take a look, that rear hand, adjust your back foot towards 10 and notice how much more range you can gain in that shot. If we now bring our attention to the front foot, you never want your front foot to move and point towards 12 o'clock. The same reason, if my front foot is pointing towards 12 o'clock, I can't rotate and engage this hip with as much mobility nor power. Again, just adjust that front foot towards 2 o'clock in an orthodox stance, and from 12 to 10 o'clock in a southpaw stance. The second thing that having your front foot pointing towards 12 encourages is a square body. If you're square on towards your opponent, you're offering them the biggest target to get hit. You want to turn that front shoulder in to narrow your torso and turn this front foot towards 2 o'clock to help encourage that position. Once again, from southpaw, turn it in, front shoulder in towards my opponent. 10 o'clock. Not only does having your feet flared out affect your ability to put your hips into your shots and therefore affecting your power and your range, it also affects your ability to move in any direction as efficiently as possible. By having your feet parallel together, you're able to drive forwards, backwards, left, right, no matter where you want to go, nice and effectively. Whenever you move in boxing, you always want to use your opposite foot as a driving force. What I mean by that, if I'm stepping forwards, my back foot drives me forwards, my front foot steps. If I'm stepping off towards my right, my left foot drives, my right foot steps. It's the exact same in the southpaw stance. If you want to move over towards your right, left foot drives, right foot steps. If you want to move over towards your left, right foot drives, left foot steps. Now, another common mistake boxers make is they step with the wrong foot first. So, for example, if you want to step forwards, they tend to come with their back foot first and then step over. If they want to step backwards, step that front foot and then their back foot. It might not look like a big mistake, especially if you see me in my boxing stance moving over, doing small steps. However, what this is doing is closing the distance between your legs, allowing you to come off balance. Now, if my opponent sees what I'm doing, they're going to time their shots for when my feet are close together. If you're caught with your feet too close together, you're unable to punch as effectively as you need to, and there's no way you're going to be able to defend any of your opponent's attacks. Correct this by driving and stepping. Always take small and calculated steps and then build your speed up. Similarly to bringing your feet too close together is crossing your feet over when you step left and right. This here, as you can see, puts you in an extremely vulnerable position. There is absolutely nothing I can do to my opponent, nor can I defend from my opponent. As we said, when stepping left, you drive with your right foot, step with your left foot. When stepping right, you drive with your left foot, step with your right foot. Exact same in southpaw. Driving with my left, stepping with my right, driving with my right, stepping with my left. The next important thing to consider with this is when you step over to the left, if I've taken 6 inches there, I'm only stepping 6 inches with this foot. I am not stepping 6 inches and then going 1.5 feet and completely crossing my feet over. 6 inches that way, 6 inches that way. Always follow the exact same with your feet. Remember, you want to land back into a good boxing stance. And just to demonstrate, if I step with the wrong foot first, so if I want to step left and I step with my right foot, you can see I'm completely off balance. If I want to step right and I step with my left foot, once again, I'm crossing my feet over. You will find nervous and new boxers do this quite often because we revert back to what we know naturally. And when we walk, if you see me walking from the side, my feet are crossing over. Boxing movements are very unnatural and alien to us at the start. However, once you become accustomed to them, you'll notice how much more effective your balance and your power is with your shots. This is one of the most common mistakes I see in boxers, especially new boxers. When moving, your feet become too linear. Your back foot becomes directly behind your front foot. Now, when you're like this, you cannot engage this hip anywhere near as effectively as you need to in your shots, and you've got no balance or power from your own bent arm shots or your opponent's bent arm shots. You want, if you're in an orthodox stance, to step your back foot round to the right ever so slightly. Be very careful of not coming too square on. We'll come to that in a moment. With that back foot round to the right ever so slightly, you maintain a nice, firm, wide stance. You also allow yourself to engage this rear hip into your shots, your rear hand shots, with more mobility, and you still maintain a nice, narrow, streamlined upper body. If I'm in a southpaw stance and I find my feet become too linear, I want this back foot to be stepped round to the left ever so slightly. Similarly to your feet becoming too linear, as we've just mentioned, boxers come too square on. This is another common mistake. One, because it feels more natural to you to be stood square onto your opponent when throwing your shots. However, as you can see, I'm offering a huge target here and I haven't got anything to actually drive my weight into my shots. If I'm too square on like this, I'm going to knock myself off balance when my shots connect to my opponent. There's one person that I could say is an anomaly to this, and that's Mike Tyson. He would box very square on. However, he's got an unhuman amount of explosivity and power and would just be able to drive his shots and fear into his opponents that they would never be able to capitalise on how square on he is. He might have done it, but I really recommend that you don't do it. Whenever you move in boxing, you always want to land on your toes first. Have your knees softly bent and shift the weight to the balls of your feet. Don't get confused and go all the way up onto your tiptoes, as you're going to burn yourself out and you're not going to be able to balance. Your back heel wants to be raised 1 or 2 inches, keeping you ready to drive that rear hip into your shots and spring you forward into action. One of the more common mistakes boxers make is being flat-footed. If you're flat-footed, you slow your movement down, your ability to get in and out of range when you need to, and it also encourages you to go heel, toe, toe, heel, toe, heel. You never ever want to walk or move around in boxing like this because it's going to leave you completely off guard. If you're moving in for an attack and you plant your heel down first and your opponent launches a counter attack nice and sharp, you've got to roll your foot onto your toes before driving yourself back. Now, it might seem like such a small movement and think, oh, what's the big deal here? That half a second can be the difference between getting yourself out of range and out of danger or getting hit. One of the common reasons that we do this is because when we walk, we always go heel toe, heel toe. As I said, some of the movements in boxing, especially with the footwork, will feel very alien to you in the early days. This, however, is a lazy and unnecessary habit. Practice good footwork from the start and you'll find that you never need to plant your heels down first. One of the more common mistakes boxers make is stepping with that front foot and leaving that back foot dragging behind. You might feel that this isn't one of the worst mistakes you can make. However, by leaving this back foot dragging, once again, I'm limiting my ability to actually engage and put this rear hip into my shots, taking away the power and range. And secondly, I'm standing with a very wide stance, therefore using a lot of my core energy to stay upright. Boxing is all about doing the most efficient work as possible, the least amount of work for the greatest amount of reward. If you step forward with that front foot, make sure you bring this back foot underneath your hip so that you can feel some weight on it. Once you've got it in that position, you know you can drive your shots in properly with power and good range. One of the more common mistakes you see in novice boxers is taking two larger steps, lunging forwards or leaping backwards. Now what that does is uses a lot more energy than necessary, and it also affects your ability to judge your range. If you watch a novice boxer versus an open class boxer, and especially the world class open class boxers, you will notice the open class boxers always take small calculated steps. When you're boxing, 6 inches is all you need to be out of range. A tiny little step is just as effective as a large leap back. However, you've used far less energy and you're still putting yourself in a position to spring back and counter-attack your opponent when you need to. We will talk ring tactics in a later video. However, for now, if you just think about lunging all the way back, you're going to corner yourself off up against the ropes much quicker, leaving you with less room in the ring to manipulate where you want to go. And when you want to come back in for your counter-attack, your opponent is miles away from you. So you've got to work your way all the way back in range to then get that attack off. Whereas if you are in range, unload your first attack, tiny little step back, step back in, bam, 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 you can be so much more effective with your footwork. When you move in boxing, you always want your weight to be central, and if anything, maybe towards this back leg ever so slightly. You want to feel weight on this back leg. If you take a step forwards, you always need to maintain this balance. One of the more common things you see with boxers, and this happens across all levels, is they'll take a step forward and start to put too much weight on this front foot. They will then unload a combination of shots and then stay very front foot heavy. Now, as you can see from being front foot heavy here, I'm completely exposed to uppercuts and bent arm shots from my opponent. And even more so, I'm unable to drive this rear hand and hip into my shots. I've got no power coming from my legs nor my torso. By bringing your weight central, slightly favoured to the back leg, you are able to throw any combination of shots that you want to, as your weight is easily distributed between both legs. You are also able to fully engage your rear hip into your shots to make sure you've got maximum power and range. Thank you for watching. In this video, I've shown you just some of the common mistakes that novice and advanced boxers make. Footwork is the most important skill in boxing. Without good footwork, none of the rest of it can come together as efficiently as you need it to. There's obviously a lot more to footwork than we've covered in these last couple of videos. However, go away and practice the basics. Nail this, practice it over and over and over again, and I guarantee you'll be better than most boxers out there. Once you've mastered the basics, we can then think about progressing into more complicated things, such as using footwork to control where your opponent moves in the ring. If you haven't already, I'd really recommend that you watch my other videos on boxing technique. The next step forward from here is learning how to throw quality straight shots. If you have any questions, please leave me a comment below, or contact me on any of the social media platforms, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can.